One of the big things that we need to pay attention to as a world in order to sustain and maintain global peace is we need to maximize and optimize the use of renewable resources over non-renewable resources, because this is one of the reasons that countries or nations will go to war with another nation. So as to help sustain their population, they will use resources that they take from others. And so when a nation is self-sustaining, this is not only good for world peace, but it's also good for that country's government to be able to self-govern within and be self-reliant, and the citizens to be self-reliant within that country. And so one of the big aspects of this is that we need to use renewable materials, not only renewable energy, such that we can repurpose, reuse, and recycle the materials that we use in a given conflict between any two or more nations, such that that conflict requires the use of those materials to make things like guns, artilleries, armor, and things like that, such that when we can reuse, recycle, and renew those materials, not only can they be reused to sustain the level of firepower on a front or the protection of the soldiers on that front, but it can also be used, renewable materials can also, and renewable energy can also be used to support after the war effort is done and the conflict is resolved, such that we can use those materials in the rebuilding of the infrastructure of affected countries from previous conflicts. And so then we end up with countries that have been ravaged that can rebuild their infrastructure using materials that we use for things every day in war, like guns and tactical vests, things like that, artillery. And that's why I think that material science in renewable materials is very important as far as funding, as well as the production, manufacturing, and implementation of those materials in a way that maintains the standard of the weaponry or protective gear that soldiers are using when they are going into these conflicts. And I think it promotes safety, global peace, and it promotes self-reliance for the nation. And when you're dealing with smaller democracies like Taiwan or Ukraine against larger countries like China or Russia, you run into an issue that the larger a country is, there tends to be more resources in that country. And a lot of those resources are non-renewable and they're not always accessible, such that they can be accessed. But given that they run out of their materials, it gives you a strategic advantage as a small democracy against a larger nation, such that you can reuse, repurpose, and recycle the materials that you're using and the weapons that you have, so that those things, like I said, can not only be used in wartime, but then the materials can be recycled and reused and repurposed in the instance of rebuilding infrastructure and ecosystems. And that's good for global environmental needs as well. And so I really think that it does give Ukraine and the Ukraine and Russia conflict an even better strategic option if, let's say, we were to build some type of way to, or manufacturing plant or whatever it might be outside of Ukraine, so as to repurpose, reuse, and recycle materials that are on the battlefield for these uses, not only such that those buildings, those manufacturing plants can be used after the war, but so that they can be used during the war to maintain the supply of weaponry and things like that. Because when you have a war, non-renewable resources tend to run out very quickly. And the more things that you can recycle, reuse, and repurpose from a battlefield, that helps sustain the level of firepower and protection on that front against an enemy nation or a nation that is fighting you. And honestly, I get that the Russian people are not necessarily pleased with everything that Putin's doing. And honestly, I can't say that I am either, because he's a hack job, but loser. But honestly, this I think is important for the maintenance and for maintaining a level of peacekeeping and global, kind of sanity or whatever. But